Renu? Renu? Oh my god, Renu's power went out! Well, I guess we live here now. What the fuck? Hello everyone and welcome to the Atcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your eternity, Soup.
And I'm your reincarnated saint with unparalleled magical power, Renu.
Alright, this week AT stands for Absolute Territory because we'll be sampling the Spring 2021 season. But before we get into that, what have we been up to? What have you been up to?
It's been a hot minute.
It has been. The last time we recorded was quite a long time ago for the wrap-up, which didn't get posted for a long time because it was like 3 hours.
It was an extra long one, yeah.
Yeah, it was super long, so we had to take some time to edit it, and then like also I kind of messed up the timing of it because I was like, oh yeah, the end of the month. There's another week until like the last Sunday of the month. No, there was not. There was not another Sunday.
It's all right. Don't worry.
It's fine. It's fine.
We got it. We did it.
we got around to it in the end.
Yeah, so I guess like the biggest thing that's happened since we last recorded, which you already know about, is I have a new family member. I have a fluffy doggo.
Fluffy doggo. Puppy.
Her name is Clover, yes. She's big, fluffy, white puppy. She's a Great Pyrenees, so she will be humongous.
Yes,
very
giant,
soon.
Probably larger than you are.
Probably. I mean, TBH. And we've been really excited about that. I mean, it's just like every spare moment is, dedicated to her. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. I imagine that it is.
Yeah, it is. No one likes to talk about how much work a puppy is, like in the grand scheme of like talking about how wonderful puppies are. They're as much work, I would say, as raising like an actual child. I mean, maybe parents might be affronted by that, but you don't really have like a sleep schedule with a puppy. Like, you just
well, like 100%. Because the thing is, even raising like a cat is like an amount of work, like more than you think it is. And cats are like low maintenance pets. Yeah. Like a dog is so much more.
It is a lot more maintenance. Definitely. I mean, I say it's as much work as raising a child. It's less work than raising a child, if only because a child is less independent for much longer. Right. But there are similarities between the struggles that you deal with raising a toddler versus raising a puppy.
You don't get to sleep on your schedule anymore.
Yeah, you sleep on their schedule, and you're lucky if you do, and that's about it. And you have to work on socializing them, teaching them the right things, the wrong things, so on and so forth. So it's all of that. But she's a real joy. She's so cute, super lovable. She loves socializing with people.
Oh, puppy.
Yeah, she loves people. Other dogs, like, it's kind of like hit or miss. Like, she's kind of choosy about which dog she ends up liking on first impressions. But that's understandable. A lot of dogs are actually like that. So yeah. Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. Aside from that, I managed to, while she was sleeping, go out and watch the Demon Slayer movie.
Oh my god, wow. Good job. I made plans to watch it, but they didn't come to fruition quite yet, so.
Okay. It's still in theaters, right?
I have no idea. I may be, like, the thing is, the problem is that it is not up to a set schedule, right? Like, each theater chooses when it stops showing the movie, which, to be fair, like it's a fairly popular movie, even stateside. So there's a pretty decent chance they'll keep it for a while. But yeah, I mean this Friday I'm like double vaccinated, and I can kind of
oh, nice.
I can go out and take that little extra bit of risk. As you know, I'll obviously be wearing a mask, right? But like.
Yeah.
And I can go out and watch the Demon Slayer movie, hopefully.
Oh yeah, definitely. Our theater was like almost empty. It wasn't completely empty, but there were 3 groups, and by groups I mean there was me by myself, a couple, and then like a small group of friends, I guess, who we all sat super separate, like across the theater from each other. So
yeah, they clear a lot of the seats so that you're very separated from people. Which it also though means that like there's only like 4 people in every showing, because like once you take the 2 like middle rows, like there's really nowhere else good to sit.
I'll say this, like people like don't like to necessarily watch movies by themselves, but I'm really glad that I went by myself for this one, because no one needs to see me emote that much during a movie.
Right. Yeah.
It was wonderful. I got really immersed in the movie, and it was great. I enjoyed it.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks so good. I want to watch it so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's essentially what I've been up to. Puppy and trying to get free time to do stuff.
Yeah, you have seemed a little busy recently.
And,
yeah, I don't envy you any one bit. I say that as if I haven't been busy. I've been in like
you've been busy too.
Busy.
Yeah.
It's I've actually, I don't know why, but like I've been more busy than like I realized recently. Because like I'm just like, oh yeah, you know, it's fine. I have a lot of free time. Oh no, wait, I'm doing this and this and this and this and this, and oh my god, I'm doing a lot of things.
Don't overbook yourself again, like you have a habit of doing.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm good. I have a good balance right now. And right now I'm like, I'm like just wrapping up one of my like freelancing projects. So I'm kind of between jobs right now. I don't really have any like work going on. So I've started streaming again. That's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed you started up your streams again. So that's good.
Yeah. I don't know. It's been. I feel like I've been more tired than normal lately. Like more tired than normal even in the context of like, you know, having been locked inside for like a year and some time. For the global pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely been. I've been a lot busier for no discernible reason. I can't even express why. Like I don't know. But. Yeah. I'm. I feel like I'm kind of mounting the curve on that one, right? Like mounting the hill on that one.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be a little easier from here for a couple weeks.
Good.
Yeah, and I got some like fun stuff planned.
Yay.
Some fun stuff in the pipeline. Some plans and stuff. Gonna hang out with some like of my vaccinated friends. We're planning a trip where we seclude ourselves from society in a cabin in the woods or whatever. Right?
Again?
Yeah. I mean, again, but it's been like a year since the last time we did it. So, you know, it's kind of where I'm at. I am, so I mentioned this, right? But I'm streaming more, and I'm streaming Dark Souls 3 again, but this time we're doing it co-op. So I've brought my friend, and we've been playing through it co-op, which is very funny. It lets us do some very funny things.
Good.
Aside from that, today, for the first time in probably like a month or so, I got to see Bark.
What happened? Where was he?
I don't remember if I ever talked about this on the podcast, but a while ago he slipped a disc and had to go to the vet.
Oh no!
So he had to essentially stay inside. So he was staying at the neighbor's place for like the past like 6 weeks or something. Recovering and like, you know, taking his painkillers and stuff. But today, you know, he was walking around outside. He was roaming around. And like, you know, it's funny because on one hand it's like, yay, we get to see Bark again. On the other hand, it's like, should we really be letting this cat back outside? He keeps coming back like injured. But I mean, that's the nature of an outdoor cat, right? And it's kind of hard to like it's hard to turn an outdoor cat into an indoor cat, especially when, like, technically speaking, the cat was never yours to begin with. Like somebody else raised this cat and then turned this cat into an outdoor cat, and then now the neighbors and us are like burdened with taking care of this animal. I mean, obviously, like, we love Bark and we want good things for him, but like,
Yeah.
What truly would make him happy? Like, you know,
Yeah. There's like, I would say the whole indoor versus outdoor cat topic is actually pretty hotly debated within the cat community, I guess.
Yeah, well, because it's so dangerous, right? It knocks a lot of time off of a cat's, like, you know, life. But, like, I mean, not that we got much of a choice on this one, gotta say.
Yeah, I think if the cat has, like, been outdoors for most of its life and it's, you know, happier that way, it seeks it out in that sense.
Yeah.
Then I think having, like, an indoor/outdoor situation is pretty nice for the cat, because the cat will know I come inside, I get food, I get cuddles, I can be warm away from the, you know, any kind of bad weather, but I can still walk outside and enjoy, like, the sun and, you know, that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like one of those things where obviously, like, a cat that like an outdoor cat is gonna live a lot, like, shorter of a life.
Yeah,
overall.
they've had to go through a lot more hardships. Yeah.
Right. The question there is just like, you know, is that a humane thing to do? Which I can see why there might be some debate about it. But obviously in this case it's kind of a moot point, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's an animal, and they're not, you know, I don't know. I think there's a huge argument to be made about the fact that it's an animal that originally belonged outside, and we have domesticated them to live with us. But ultimately, like, well, I think it's up to the personality of the cat too. Like, some cats don't really want to go outside.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, there are, like, there's definitely, like, you know, ecological impacts that you should consider before, you know, sending your cat outside. Like, a lot of places, in fact, most places, I would say, like, you really don't want a cat messing with the local ecosystem, but, you know, people do it anyway, and then, like, they're like, why are all the birds gone? Well, I'll tell you why all the birds are gone. Yeah.
Our cats love to hunt lizards, and it's like, but what if you left them alone?
there are a ton of lizards here that I just didn't see last year, that I was you know, when I started living here, because it was so late in the season. But like, there are a ton of lizards, and Philip fucking loves to hunt lizards. He sees them and he's like, I must hunt.
Yeah, and it's like, you don't need to, though, because you eat at home. You're just doing this for sport, and they
exactly.
They like to do it.
I mean, I see Philip, and he's like growling, and I look outside. There's a lizard doing push-ups, and it's like, oh, come on, buddy, put it away.
It's flexing on him, and he's just like, bro, I
have to do it. It's flexing on me.
Yeah, exactly. It's an affront to my pride.
Just like, all right, whatever. Anyway, yeah, aside from that, I had my second vaccination shot. Other than that, I have, the only other, like, exciting thing I've been up to is I was recently on an episode of a podcast that was not this one. Yeah.
I saw that on Twitter.
So I was on the Skiffy and Fancy show, to
Very
talk
cool.
about Wonder Egg Priority.
Yeah.
Where, like, if you felt like you didn't get enough Wonder Egg Priority discussion
more
in that, then you should absolutely listen to this episode, where we dive into a lot more of the, like, problems with it. It's funny because one of the people that I was recording with, who is the co-host of Righteous Kicks, which is the Kamen Rider podcast that our friend Brandon does, Iori Kusano, brought up that the way that Wonder Egg Priority went kind of reminded us of the Cube guy. Because like the first like 7 episodes of the show are like this setup, and then it goes in a completely bonkers different direction for some reason.
I would argue that at least Wonder Egg Priority went in a direction that didn't make me as upset as Cube Guy.
Yeah, well, because the thing about Cube Guy is like it was just like, the thing about that Cube anime was it was always kind of like flimsy and terrible. Like it never really did anything. One Egg Priority promises you something and then gives you something else that is interesting, but not what you were asking for.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, if you want to hear some thoughts about that, feel free to listen to that.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
I will say it was kind of a nightmare to record over Zoom. Normally, you and I would record over Discord, but
right.
I don't know what it is about Zoom specifically, but I mean, okay, it's a conjunction of problems, right? Because Zoom,
okay,
and Reaper were fighting for control over my audio interface, and like my drivers, to the point where afterwards it like broke everything, and I had to just restart my computer. It was awful. Yeah.
Wow.
The lasting effects of which we're still feeling on like Saturday's Ace Attorney stream, where like people could only hear you.
Oh yeah, that's right.
From the left or whatever.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, no, I've never had programs fight for dominance like
me
that
neither.
hard before. So that was interesting, but you know, in the end we managed to get it done.
Cool.
Yeah. So other than that, I think that's it really. I haven't been up to much.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about anime?
Yeah, the many anime that we watched.
Yeah. Oh my god. We watched so many.
So many.
Like, okay, part of the thing is that like at this point there's a lot of anime that's coming out, right?
Yes.
So like there is more anime than there used to be. Our trailer like watching episodes are getting longer.
They are.
And like recently somebody did the math and found out that like half of all anime that exists was created after 2010, which is just
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot to take in.
It just goes to show how much the electronic entertainment industry is vastly increasing, like, and how much we'll have to invest more and more money and time into it, essentially. Video games and stuff like that too. I feel like, I don't know if anyone's done the math on video games, but I feel like those are also coming out now more than ever.
For sure. And you know, obviously, like, there are industries that are just getting like unsustainably large. Obviously,
right?
Like, both anime and like, you know, AAA video game production is kind of suffering from the same thing of like just kind of chewing through workers. Anyway, yeah, so we watched a lot of stuff, which is honestly why it took like part of why it took so long for us to get this episode out. The other part being, you know, that we had to finish the other episode first. And anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, we're somewhat back on track, although we did have to miss this Monday for our regular anime viewing because I had like scheduling conflicts. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about what we watched. So the first thing that we watched is Ijiranaide Nagatoro-san, or it's like Don't Tease Me Nagatoro-san.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't toy with me, Miss Nagatoro. That's a good translation. Which is a I feel like this is one of those things that like a lot of people know about, even if you've never like actually read it or whatever. But it is about a young man, a young, quiet, reclusive boy in high school getting the absolute ever-loving shit kicked out of him, mentally speaking.
This guy got like murdered mentally before our eyes in the first episode. Like it was so bad. I was like, how on earth could he ever possibly go back to school or draw again? I like there's no way, right? There's too much trauma.
Yes. This is a manga that I've read and have enjoyed. It's definitely a how how do I put this? It's definitely one of those things that like you will immediately know if you like it or not, because it's a gag comedy that is kind of rooted in similar-ish kind of like cringe-ish humor. It's not quite the same, because there's a little bit more like, it's not characters being awkward, it's like it's like, I mean, it's in the title, right? It's like a bullying sort of playfulness, I guess. I mean, this man's getting savage, but it's a playfulness.
It's like it feels more it feels like the same formula as Takagi-san, except a lot more savage. Like Takagi-san feels a lot more fluffy. Mode. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if that is up your alley, then this is that.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of those things that like you will like it if you like it, and you will probably very much not if you don't, and you will be able to tell immediately off the bat. It will take you probably not even the length of the first episode, to
yeah, to get the vibe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it is a gag comedy show about a bunch of high school girls bullying a quiet nerdy boy, and they all make very intense faces. It's like Kakegurui light.
Yeah.
But it's Takagi-san dark. So it's kind of in the middle of those two shows.
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, we probably won't continue watching it, but to be honest, that's because there's a lot of anime this season.
We have to be really careful about which ones we choose.
Oh my
god.
Keep
up with.
Like,
yeah.
Anyway, so next we watched Tokyo Revengers, which was surprisingly engaging. Actually, it was very interesting.
Yeah, right. It was not anything that I expected.
No, not at all. I feel like Tokyo Revengers is one of those things that like I just like wouldn't really understand if I didn't watch it, because it has a very like specific vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
The premise is that a boy or a man learns one day that the only girlfriend he's ever had in his life was killed in a gang incident, and then he gets sent back to the past and is like, oh no, I have to save her from the gang violence.
Yeah.
And he has to both navigate the middle school-ness of his life while also trying desperately to change the future. It's actually a very interesting watch. It reminds me a lot of Erased.
Yes, 100%.
The vibe is very similar, except it's like not like a murder mystery so much as it is a just like a drama.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I would say that in Erased, the stakes feel, I guess, a lot more intense. And the pacing of Erased is faster and I would say more fluid. Like, I feel like Tokyo Revengers so far, at least based on the first episode, it felt a little slower. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, though, because, like, we only watched the first episode.
Yeah, we only watched one episode, yeah.
And I see it sometimes come up on, like, manga websites, and there's 200 chapters.
Oh my gosh!
It's a long series.
Wow, alright, get in there!
So, I mean, so it must be popular, like, it must have an audience. There's no possible way to get to 200 chapters unless you have an audience.
I mean, you never know.
I mean,
publishing-wise.
What you do after those 200 chapters, very much depends. But oftentimes, if you get to 200, it means you're at least popular.
Yeah, I mean, if you're being published and printed, definitely.
I'm really interested to see how the next couple episodes are. Because I'm wondering how they're going to structure the rest of the show.
Yeah, me
right?
too.
Because in the first episode, we kind of get the setup and the premise, and
Yes.
and then the first like time jump, and then he goes back in the future, and she's still dead, but
Yeah.
her brother is alive now, and he's
Yeah,
a police officer.
that was crazy.
Yeah, he's like, it's me. I became a police officer because you told me in the past to
That
become
was
one.
so like I was like, you
like, what
listened
is
to
happening?
him? You listened to this crazy guy?
Right? Exactly. Yeah. I also like that you go back to the past when he's like, I peaked in middle school. Turns out he was just a shitter in middle school also.
Yeah, right.
Like he's hanging out with a bunch of like of these kids who are like, oh, we're so cool and tough, and then just get the ever living shit kicked out of them.
Yeah, he had just conveniently forgot about that part of his middle school life.
Yeah, maybe he just had a sucky life all around. Yeah, I will say, this just proves to me that nobody who makes like manga or anime has ever seen a middle schooler.
Yeah.
Like, definitely none of these boys look like middle schoolers, but like even more so when you see the third years who are like grown ass men.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
oh yeah, this is what a 14-year-old boy looks like. He's got rippling muscles and face scars. You're like, what are you talking about? I don't know if you've ever seen a middle schooler, but they look like literal babies.
Yeah, I think if you had like one or two dudes who looked like they were much older, like in high school, I guess, then it would be fine.
Well,
but
I mean,
all of them looked like grown men.
Yeah, I was gonna say like that totally like tracks, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like there are definitely people who look much older in like middle school when they like
Yeah.
hit that growth spurt early, but like
Yeah.
For everybody to just be like, we're hulking men. It's like, what?
Right.
What?
It's like JoJo's.
Right, it's like a JoJo's level, like this is what a middle schooler is, and you're like, I don't understand. You could have just made them older. Why are they in middle school?
Right, why are they in middle school?
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why? If you can't draw middle schoolers, why would you set your manga in middle school?
Right.
I mean, part of it obviously has to do with like the art style. It has kind of like it has like a Seven Deadly Sins kind of vibe to it.
Ish, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like very like cartoony.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm intrigued. I would definitely be willing to watch some more of this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Next we have not started the final season of Fruits Basket yet, but rest assured we will definitely watch it.
We will get there. Yeah.
The end of Fruits Basket has finally arrived in anime form.
I'm very excited to have you finally experience the end.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where like if you watch the anime version, you never experience what the end of the story. Sometimes you don't even realize these stories actually end. Like,
right.
Like Ouran High School Host Club has an ending. Actually,
it does have
one
an ending.
hell of an ending.
I wish they would animate it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Fruits Basket has obviously been successful.
Pave the way.
We can only hope, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So moving on, 86, which is a So it's an anime about war, like a country going to war, but against like I don't know if it's another country or if it's I think it's another country, but they have like autonomous drones that fight. So they're fighting basically like this like proxy war. Except the secret is that in the kingdom that we're in the perspective of they don't actually have technology that advanced, so they just have like people that are on the record, like on the books, dead, pilot these things, and I will say this show is very, very interesting.
It's intense.
It's really intense. From the first episode, I could tell that it was really high quality. Like, the production on it is very good.
Yes.
Especially if you see the, like, CG, like, tanks or whatever, the, like, drones fighting. They look really good. And they look pretty good consistently, which is, like, not an easy thing to do. Like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the hardest thing to do always, right? I think you can have these like big CG sequences, and because it's CG, you have like all the assets ready. But the way that they've composited it makes everything feel like it's just very well integrated into the backgrounds.
Right.
So yeah. I am very intrigued by this show specifically because it has posed some very interesting like moral I guess like, stakes, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, we're talking about people who are probably like criminals or something, right? That's generally how like these setups go, and they're officially dead, so they're not considered like people, right? And so the country is allowed to essentially write off the PR of like, hey, we're fighting an autonomous drone war, except piloting the autonomous drones are people who just technically are not considered legally alive, right?
Right. On paper, they don't exist essentially anymore.
Right. But they're still piloted by military officers, quote unquote. So there's some kind of like it's very interesting because it's because it's essentially like making a metaphor of war, right? Of like the kind of commander versus like soldier like dilemma, right? And at the same time, it's I think it might have some interesting things to say, especially because I noticed that a lot of what I liked about the first episode was how harsh things are, in a sense. Like,
yeah,
there's at least 2 different transitions where like food falls onto the ground or something, and it immediately like hard cuts into like a scene of battle, and it's really jarring, but it's also like really interesting because it's a very like this is the feeling of PTSD vibe to it that I find interesting. Especially because one of the obviously the most like common kind of PTSD triggers is sound, like sounds that are seemingly innocuous to the normal person, like fireworks or whatever, right? Can easily trigger like PTSD in people who've returned from war. So I think that the direction of it is like right off the bat very interesting.
And I really like the I guess the moral anchor within it, which is we're seeing almost everything from the perspective of, I guess she's their commander, their observer, their overseer. Yeah.
She's like a princess too, I think.
Yeah, and so you get introduced to this world through her side of things, which is she's in a very privileged position and everything is peaceful where she's at, and all the other people in the kingdom kind of look like her. They're all like white/silver haired people.
Right, exactly.
And she gets assigned to this position and she carries it out very dutifully, like to the letter. But you can hear how annoyed the soldiers under her command become.
Right.
And it's very clearly like you get to sit somewhere safe in your high chair while the rest of us on the ground are the ones carrying all the costs, and you're just your very presence is annoying to us kind of vibe. And I think that's so I really want to see where that goes. Like, obviously I think she'll have to witness more and more of what they're going through and actually maybe be a bridge between what's going on in her, nice kingdom versus what's going on the ground floor.
Right.
And I think it's a really interesting metaphor for like actual war where, the places that these people are protecting are kind of like in a bubble, like they're removed from the ground combat, so they don't really actually know what's going on over there. And so to have someone, from within that peaceful place giving all these orders to soldiers on the ground floor, it's like it's kind of annoying because they're not there with you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of like I'm a big fan of setups like this where you have the like unmentionable like squad or whatever, like the war squad of exiles fighting for a country that doesn't recognize them as human beings, that doesn't recognize them as being alive, and like kind of grappling with that. So there's certainly a lot of meat there to be explored, and it, you know, the show looks good too, which is a big plus. I'm really, really, really interested in seeing more of this. I'm definitely gonna be watching this. Okay, I've been killing slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level. This is a cute, slow life isekai story. It is exactly what it says on the tin, like many isekai stories. She kills slimes for 300 years and maxes out her level.
Yep, she does that in the first episode, and so then I'm assuming the rest of the show is based like kind of like almost like a gag setup where all of these she gets all of these challengers who want to face off with her because she gets a reputation for being like super overpowered from her slime leveling, and she beats them all up rather easily, and that's essentially just that's the show.
Yep, that's the show. It is short, sweet, straightforward. Like you will know if this is what you need in your life.
Yes,
if you need a nice, cute, low stakes, slow life isekai story, here it is for you. I've read the manga for this as well. It's cute. And it's completely the like turn your brain off and look at cute things happening.
It seems like
show.
it, yes.
And as far as that goes, it's highly effective. So if that's what you're interested in, I highly recommend checking this out. All right, Nomad! Megalo Box 2! Or I guess it's Megalo Box 2 Nomad. I like only vaguely remember what happened at the end of Megalo Box 1, and I don't think Joe remembers anything that happened at the end of Megalo Box 1.
I remember what happened because it was a happy ending, alright? They were having a barbecue together.
I see.
Him and his rival, and then the child, and then the dog were all there, and they were having a nice little shindig, and that was it. And then they like pan away, and everyone's like laughing and happy, and then the narrator,
and then the second season starts, and he's a hot mess,
a big old mess.
He's a big old mess. He's drinking.
We don't know
he's taking
what
painkillers.
Right. All we know is that his coach, his trainer, is no longer there. He's only in Joe's head, and that has something
like
to do
ghost.
with it. Yeah.
So we have so obviously like it starts in the middle of all of this happening, right? It doesn't tell you what happened before, and obviously that's like what the rest of the season is gonna be for. I mean, I'm interested, obviously, like. I'm interested because Megalo Box was a kind of a reimagining of Ashita no Joe or Tomorrow's Joe, about like a scrappy young kid coming up with his like scrappy coach and his scrappy boy sidekick, and going on to win like a big boxing tournament and becoming like a legend, right? And he essentially does that in Megalo Box by being Gearless Joe, the boxer who doesn't use the gears. And then you start Megalo Box 2, and he's like using gears and he's beating the shit out of people for money. And like nobody in the underground boxing ring can keep up with him because he's Joe. He's Gearless Joe. He's the best boxer. But also like he's a mess. He's like doing painkillers and drugs and then throwing them up and then just drinking more after he throws up, and it's just tasty. Episode 1 is very disorienting and like kind of slow. And I feel like that might kind of be the point, right? Like we're kind of like dragging our feet, like Joe is like, you know,
right.
Dragging himself on like he's a dead man. He feels like he doesn't really have anything worth living for. I don't know. I guess like I wish I knew more, so I guess I'll keep watching is kind of how I'm feeling, right?
I think that's the one of the main, I guess, catches of the season is
Yeah.
like, we gotta find out, like, what happened, like, why did he end up this way after such a happy ending to Megalo Box 1?
Right, exactly. I kind of felt this way where like Megalo Box 1 has a very straightforward premise because it's essentially just, all right, boxer man become good boxer. He become best boxer, right? And that's a pretty simple thing to follow. And because the first episode is so disorienting of Megalo Box 2, I mean on purpose, most likely, right?
Right.
It was very much likely intended to be like that. I'm left feeling like I want to know what happened. And that's the primary motivator for me to watch the show right now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Megalo Box 2. I'm like trying. It's funny because like also part of it is just me trying desperately to remember like what happened in Megalo Box 1 when we watched it like years ago.
Just rewatch the last episode or last half of the last episode.
Right. I just remember the like list of boxer names. Some of them are like really, really cool.
Oh yeah.
It was like Shark, like Shimejima or something.
Shark.
And then my favorite one was Hippopotamus Iwasaki. I was like, delicious. That's such a good name. That's such a good fucking name. All right. Yeah. I mean, we'll be watching it like for our boy Joe.
Our boy.
Well, we're gonna see his hot man's mess redemption arc.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Next is a show called Vivy, spelled with a Y at the end, not an I. So this is about about AI, and the future where AI massacre all of humanity.
As we know will happen inevitably.
As we know will inevitably happen to us. But the story follows one of the first like sentient AI who is basically created for the purpose of being like a Vocaloid, right? Like she's a performer. She's like a songwriter. And then an AI comes back from the future sent by a scientist. And he inhabits a teddy bear and is like, hey, we gotta stop humanity from being big die by the AI. So I have absolutely no idea what this show is gonna be like, because we've only watched the first episode. And like, I don't know if it's going to be a philosophical approach to AI and like sentience and like what it means to be like alive and like thinking. I don't know if it's gonna be that, or if it's going to be like a drama where it's like, oh, we have to like figure out what's going on. You know, there's a lot of like stuff going on. And I suspect that it might actually be the third option, which is like an action show. That's what I was
feeling. It feels like she's gonna be a superhero.
I feel like she's gonna start like throwing hands.
Yeah.
I like. There's just something about this premise that tells me like she's going to become a combat AI, and like obviously, you can also be like number 1 while also being number 3, right? You can be A and C. You can be a philosophical musing on what it means to be alive, what it means to be a person, through the lens of like, you know, artificial intelligence, as well as being an action thing, as evidenced by one of my favorite games of all time, Nier Automata, right? Like it's very possible, but I'm also just like the premise is so interesting to me that I'm afraid that the show will let me down.
Yeah, we might get cubed.
I might get cubed. You know what I mean? I might get cubed. But I'm hopeful because the show looks good.
Yeah.
Like it visually it looks pretty. There's actually a lot of shows that look really good visually speaking. And I don't know. I'm just like praying that this is good. Yeah. Because I really want it to be good.
Me too.
And I mean, you get Jun Fukuyama stuffed into a sentient teddy bear. So like, I mean, what is there to hate about that, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a show that I like. I just don't know what to talk about. Having only watched the first episode.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see where it goes from here because I don't have any idea.
Yeah. I'm super hyped to watch more of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, let's talk about Mars Red, which is an anime that is adapted from, of all things, a stage play, which is already kind of interesting. And it is about it's about people like a government, like, okay, it's set in the Taisho era,
Uh-huh.
like pretty shortly before World War two, I think. I can't 100% remember. But the government has a program where they're trying to make a vampire soldier unit.
Uh-huh.
And for that reason, they're pursuing vampires. And that's it. That's the premise. And the first episode is like, I really don't know what to make of it.
Me neither. I was just confused at the end, and then at the end I was like, okay, so it is vampires, and then the episode ended.
Well, part of this, I think, is this show is paced really weirdly and like cut really weirdly, and, and part of it is definitely like intentional, where there's a lot of like really hard cuts where you feel like something has happened. Well, like, you know that something has happened, but you don't know quite what it is, and so you're essentially spending a lot of the show piecing together what just happened that you didn't get to see. It feels like if you were watching an anime that was getting like King Crimson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're watching an anime, and then like King Crimson is like, all right, you don't get to see this part, and it just cuts it out.
Yeah.
It makes for a very fascinating viewing experience, and not necessarily one that is very easy to follow, if possible to follow at all. I don't know really anything about the plot other than there are vampires.
Yes, that is the only thing I gleaned from it as well.
Like, I'm kind of in two minds about this, because I really am interested in this as in general, because it has a very interesting premise, and it is really weird, and I like stuff that's like really weird. And I just don't know what the rest of it is gonna be like. I don't know if the rest of it is going to be legible in any way. I mean, I think part of it is because it is adapted from a stage play. I think there is a certain rhythm to Japanese stage plays that is emulated, I think, very well here.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because I actually realized this when I was watching one of the other shows we're going to talk about, the Pretty Boy Detective Club. I actually noticed that show, because it employs a lot of the like stage theatrics, that the pacing of Mars Red must be in some small part, at least, due to the fact that it's adapted from a stage play. It's interesting because stage plays are like such a big thing in Japan, at least, looking at it from like a nerd angle. There are a lot of people who really like stage plays there.
Yeah, it's I'm really surprised at how popular it is over there, and they have so many like musicals of anime and stuff like that too. It's
yeah.
fun.
Well, that's one of those things that where like everything gets adapted into a stage play at some point.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess, like, to be fair, stuff like that kind of happens here, but it's only like the biggest stuff, right? Like stuff like Spider-Man and like the Lion King, they get adapted into like Lion King on Ice, or like Lion
Yeah.
King the stage, the theatrical performance or whatever, right?
Right.
The musical, etc., etc. Um, yeah, it's really weird and it's really different though, because the stage play is like kind of not the same as a musical. There are obviously, many similarities, and like they share a lineage, but like, yeah, it's its own specific thing. Like in
Yes.
America, at least, stage plays are generally reserved for like classical works like Shakespeare and like opera and
Sure.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah. I don't know. I want to watch more of this. If I have time, I might. I don't know if we're gonna continue watching this together. Just
Yeah.
simply because it like we just really don't have the time to like do
Right.
it, right.
It's not that
at
it's
least
not
together.
interesting. It's just that, we have to choose.
I'm intrigued. It's just
Yeah.
that this season is like saturated with
Yeah.
very good shows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Tomorrow's Red. I don't know, like honestly, I really recommend like watching the first episode, just to see what it's like, because it's
Just to experience it, because it is very
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
It is. It's super different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of actually it reminded me a lot of Shaftworks in general. I don't know what it is about Shaft where like the direction always feels a little bit like a stage play. Like there's a lot of opening and closing, like sliding door sounds, the like clapper sounds. There's a lot of the like spotlights, that kind of stuff happening. It gives it a very like stage performance feel to it. Anyway, so next let's talk about Jouran, the Princess of Snow and Blood, which I could not tell you anything about the plot except for it is about a Yuki Onna woman fighting other monsters, and there might be a government conspiracy happening.
Yeah. I would say visually it's very striking.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're down to just watch it to admire like the style and the atmosphere, it has a lot of strong qualities there. I think story-wise, I wasn't like super hooked, I guess.
Yeah, me neither, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the concept of this a show just about this lady killing all these demons or whatever, I think that's pretty cool. And it does look impressive when she fights. But yeah, I think that's so far, at least from the first episode, that's all it's been, and I don't know where they will push it from there.
Yeah, I'm very much of the same opinion. Where visually it looked pretty good, especially when the fight scenes were happening. I think otherwise it can get a little bit like it can be inconsistent from time to time.
Yeah.
Some of the shots definitely felt like they just were, there was not a lot of care put into it, like it was rushed or whatever, right?
Right.
I mean, who's to say? We don't have a view into the production, but like the fight scenes and like all of the special effects that happen are very striking. They're very cool. I like the visual style of the show a lot.
Yeah.
The writing itself had kind of a lot to it felt lacking in many ways.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Which is kind of where I was, because like the show looks good and the trailer for it looked really, really cool. And I still stand by those statements. I just find that the actual show itself is not grabbing me as much as I thought it would.
Yeah.
Is kind of
me
where
too.
I'm at with that. So.
Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, if you're interested in like the one of the cool action shows of the season, like this definitely will probably fit in there.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Yep. Okay, SSSS.Dynazenon, which if you are familiar with Gridman, is that, but the next one, and Trigger's doing it again, and I mean, really, like, what isn't there to love about this, right? There,
I'll
like,
tell you what I don't love.
okay, what do you not love?
I don't love that girl.
Yeah. There's some stuff where I feel, you know what, actually it's actually really interesting because I feel like the human characters so far have been aside from like the shouty boy who's like the kaiju tamer, I don't feel very attached to any of them quite yet. I feel like at least with at least with the with Gridman and those characters, the main character had kind of a reason to just be like a nothing character, right? Because he was like amnesiac and he didn't
Yeah,
really
that's true. He did have an
remember
excuse.
anything, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like in this one we just kind of get like the boring protagonist, right?
Yeah, the protagonist where there's like a mysterious girl whom he's super interested in and she
Right,
treats him
exactly.
badly and that just makes him more interested in her. Like, why is she like that?
Why is
And
she like that?
the drama there, like
Ooh.
just the conceit of that, like really bothers me. But because it's I don't
kinda
know,
had the
you
feeling
see
that-
it
I kinda
everywhere.
had a feeling it would, yeah.
Yeah, but I think they do right away start by sharing some depth as to why she might behave the way that she does, you know, by treating him badly because she had a loss in the family and that has obviously affected her very deeply. And then the protagonist as well, his mom is hooking up with some dude and he clearly doesn't favor the guy.
Right.
And
I mean,
so they both come from, like, I guess, changing family situations, and that's maybe why they start relating. They might start relating with each other.
it is kind of impossible to say just because we've only seen the first episode.
Yeah.
But so far the only character we really care about is Shouty Boy because he's
Yes.
he's a real one. He's a real
The
bro.
kaiju master.
Kaiju man. He's just a weird shouty boy.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
He's
But,
like such a bro. He like chased down the girl because
Right?
she stood up the guy, the protagonist, and the protagonist was upset about it and was just still waiting for her. So he's like, I'll go find her for you. Manages to find her, tells her off for standing him up, and she's like, whatever. And he's
whatever. Yeah.
It's like, how did this guy who is like you would think is the least sensible character suddenly the most sensible, you know?
Right. I think to be fair, there's certainly something about a show like this which at least from the genre conventions is aimed towards a younger audience where like things can be a little bit more contrived, but they at the very least have to be like very simple concepts. So like the fact that this girl is just like, I can't keep promises, like that's a very simple concept to keep in mind. And it's a very simple like character flaw that a character can have if you don't have brain cells and you don't think about it.
Yeah, I think it's I'm sure it's 100% related to her backstory and the loss in her family, and they'll have it come around in a way that I think should hopefully be rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm definitely going to watch more of it because I really liked Gridman.
I liked Gridman too, and I'm not like so annoyed by the show that I wouldn't watch it. Because I am interested in seeing where it goes.
Right. I do think that this, as well as Gridman, you kind of have to lean into the fact that it's like very much a love letter, as well as being, you know, a legitimate part of the genre, right? Like a historical piece of the genre, but like just like you have to kind of lean into the fact that it's like a very like somewhat cheesy like tokusatsu show, and as far as that goes, it has been delivering quite well. We got to see a giant robot transform a couple times. We got to see it beat the shit out of a kaiju. I mean, honestly, I'm here for it. I really liked what they did with Gridman, so I have faith. I have faith that Trigger will deliver something that will make me go woo yeah. Yeah, so if you liked Gridman, or you're interested in tokusatsu, absolutely give this one a shot.
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, let's talk about Shadow's House, which is about human dolls, quote unquote, that have been given life, we think, or we're told, and must tend to the shadow people who are like people, but they exude soot and they don't have faces.
This is a terrible explanation.
It's just hard to explain.
It
I would
is.
say. It is. I am so intrigued by this show.
It feels like a story where they're starting off very small and then they're gonna expand outward.
Right.
So rather than explaining everything to you through exposition from the get-go so that you have the main setup, they just start with like this interaction between this girl, the shadow girl, and her doll and their bond.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end of the episode, they show like, oh, other characters exist in this house as well.
Right. I'm so interested in this show. Like, the premise of this is so weird, and I really like it. Definitely the first episode is a little slow. I will say.
It's pretty slow.
I think that does go to what you're saying, where they're starting very small.
Yeah.
I will say that the pacing is very slow, but it feels very like deliberate, because I think what's happening is we're starting and we're kind of like building with the main character,
right,
and the person and the shadow person that she's serving, and then like slowly we're gonna move outward into what else is happening in the rest of the house, and like what those deals are, and then probably we'll get some questions answered at some point. And I'm really interested to see, because I like the premise is just so weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Like it feels very, it has a very strong aesthetic to it, I think. Is part of why I like it. Like it's very much this like Japanese interpretation of like this like a Victorian household. And
yeah,
like nobility and stuff, which is interesting for sure.
I think something about it, probably because it's full of shadow people, reminds me of the game Eco.
Mm-hmm.
And probably also because it's kind of like in a castle-ish mansion-looking thing. But yeah, it looks like if you stuffed a Victorian mansion inside of Eco's castle and you filled it with all the shadow people, and they all had human dolls. That's the vibe that I get from it. But the first episode feels very like slice of life-y, and yeah, maybe I feel like they'll probably develop the drama as we go.
Well, that's what I was interested in, because you're right though. The first episode is like very slice of life, and like I'm kind of okay. Like I would be okay if the rest of the show was a slice of life show, because like I like slice of life shows that are set in like weird settings or like fantasy settings.
Sure, yeah.
But I would also like some questions answered. Like I don't know what the shape of the narrative of the show will be, and that's why it intrigues me, I think.
Right. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. So that's where we are at with Shadow's House.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know who to recommend this to. But if that description at all piques your interest, I would highly recommend checking it out. Let us move on to Shakunetsu Kabaddi.
Yeah, I watched this to report back, and boy. So I guess the best way I can describe it is the protagonist is this guy who kind of tries to jump into VTubing / being an internet personality, but he does it very badly because he doesn't know anything about it. And so as a result, when he gets introduced to Kabaddi and the team and whatnot, they try and recruit him and basically use his failed internet ventures to blackmail him into staying with the team.
Oh my god, what?
But I say that, but that's probably like the most interesting part. The rest of the show is just very sports anime and just kind of blasé, you know, like I will say that the explanation about the sport is fairly interesting, but the pacing is very just kind of like middle of the road, and the way that they tell the story is very middle of the road. So It's very typical sports anime fare.
All right.
But I do think that the conceit of them blackmail him because he tried to be a VTuber and failed is pretty funny.
Wow. I see we're getting to the topical the topical like everything is VTubers now. Actually,
right.
there was a cameo of a VTuber's voice in an episode of an anime, and I don't remember which one it was. Oh, it was one of those ones that we weren't gonna watch. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think there was in like one of the isekai shows that aired recently, I think there was a shot in the background where in the background was Pekora. Somebody had drawn Pekora in the background.
Why not?
It's a me, Pekora. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
So it is a straightforward sports anime. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I got from it.
Yeah.
The premise does sound very funny though. It kind of feels like one of those things that you wish they leaned more into, right?
I know, me too. I wish.
Yeah. I feel like that's my big problem with sports anime is I like the shape of sports anime, like I like the structure of sports anime. I just have a hard time getting attached to characters if they're not interesting. And I have a hard time watching something if I'm not really interested in the thing that they're doing. Which is the problem I have with a lot of sports anime, which is that it is about sports.
And I think that's completely
valid.
Make
it about the boys. I don't care about the sports.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, the next thing we watched was The Saint's Magic Power is Omnipotent, which is another cute isekai soul life show.
Yeah.
Where the main character is Renu. Renu is the main character of this show.
So the premise is essentially there's this magical summoning ritual that occurs in this fantasy world that brings the protagonist into the fantasy world as a saint healer. However, the catch is that the ritual brought two people, including her. And the prince very immediately recognizes the other girl as the saint healer and brings her into the castle. And then the protagonist is just kind of like left to the wayside to, I don't know, do whatever. And she's unable to return to her world. So she just kind of adapts to living there and decides that she's gonna go do gardening and botany and science and potion making and stuff.
Yep.
And so I was like, I feel that.
Yep. This it's one more of those shows that just fits into the genre of I have definitely turned my brain off and read about 80 chapters.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's not 80 chapters of this manga out. But I definitely did read like 30 or so chapters when they were out. I will say though, the anime has been a much nicer experience than the manga, just because the manga most of this, like, I think chapters like 10 to like 30 were scanlated like through a machine scan like translator.
Oh.
And then like vaguely tweaked for grammar and like, I mean, you don't want to be there. I mean, I understand that like scanlating is one, technically not legal, and two, a lot of work for something that could easily get you in trouble.
Yeah.
But my God, when you read one of those machine translations, you're like, this will do in a pinch, but I can see why we have people for this.
Yeah.
The value of the translator stocks really go up when you read a machine translation. But yeah, this show's pretty cute, honestly. The premise is obviously an isekai show, so that's kind of what you get. But it's also, an isekai show that isn't about a guy that gets reincarnated and decides that he's gonna invent capitalism. So that's kind of nice. Like, Shockingly, that's kind of nice. Like, I've been reading a lot of so recently I've been reading a lot of I've been going back and rereading a lot of villainous isekai manga, just because
Mhm.
I've had the craving, the urge to do so. And like, it's a little hard sometimes if I see an isekai premise that seems interesting but is like very clearly like, I'm gonna invent capitalism again. I'm like, no, he did the thing. SMH. I don't know. I just SMH. I like the courtly drama a little bit better, I think. The courtly drama of I'm annulling our engagement, but if you do that, our families will be at war, or whatever. That's far more interesting to me. I like that a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, this show is good. This show is good. If you're into isekai stuff. Otherwise, I mean, there's nothing here that's so spectacular that it will like persuade you to like isekai stories, right?
No, yeah, it's very middle of the road kind of.
Yeah. It's
isekai.
very serviceable content.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about those Snow White Notes, or Mashiro no Oto, which is about a shamisen boy who wants to play the shamisen like his grandpa, but he dies, and so the shamisen boy is like, shoot, I'm gonna go to Tokyo now, bye.
But the grandpa, right before dying, tells his
him,
grandson,
he's like, don't play the shamisen anymore.
Yeah, don't play anymore. And so the
you
grandson's
suck,
like,
don't play.
What do I do now? I still want to play. And you definitely, I feel like his struggle is so relatable as an artist, where you are, no matter what art form you are delving into, what creative thing that you're into, you eventually reach a point where technically you know the steps, but stylistically you don't know who you are, and you don't know, you kind of lose a sense of what you're doing this for, because it stops being necessarily just for your enjoyment, and you try to find a deeper meaning into it. And that feels like where he's at right now, where he doesn't really have his own style because he's been imitating his grandfather for so long, and to the point that his grandfather was just like, just stop playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's trying to find his own identity now that his grandfather is gone and he can't imitate him anymore.
Right.
So
I really, really like this show.
Yeah.
I think we only watched one episode.
Yeah, we only watched one episode, but it was a very good, like, full episode.
Good. They did a lot in that one episode.
Yeah.
Like, and not in the way where it feels like we're rushing through a lot of stuff to like get through like what the story is. It feels like legitimately it is like just narratively dense. It's like there's a lot of things happening, and a lot of things feel like they have a lot of meaning to them, which I think is honestly kind of great. I actually really, really like the idea of using I mean, I like any story that is kind of like this, about like how am I ever gonna live up to my predecessor's legacy, right?
Yeah.
And you know, obviously the emotional arc is like laid out before you. You can see it with your eyes. You can trace it. You can be like, okay, he's gonna have to discover that he has to play the shamisen for himself and not for like not to imitate his grandpa, right? And seeing that journey be depicted in a way that feels satisfying can be very difficult, but it's very clear that this show has a very good grasp on how to do so. Because well, the shamisen music like fucking goes. It slaps.
Yeah.
It slaps. Yeah. Apparently the Yoshida brothers are supervising the music, and they're probably one of the most like famous shamisen players in the world. They're like brothers that have been playing together for like 20 some years now. And like if you hear like popular shamisen music, it's probably the Yoshida brothers. And like, yeah, hell yeah. I like it because I like a story that will convey things to you without just saying them at you. Like,
Yeah.
I kind of like that they have taken this approach where they're attempting to tell the story through the music, which is honestly very, very unique and like feels like it's refreshing and like something that people don't really do that often. So I'm super invested in the main character. I'm super invested in the side characters. I really like, you know, all of the stuff that's happening. The characters feel endearing and interesting. They feel like they
I
have a
hate
lot
that
to
guy.
them. Yeah,
The
that
boyfriend.
guy obviously sucks, right?
Why did the girl have to leave and we get stuck with the boyfriend?
Right, exactly. But I also like that we have this juxtaposition between the main boy, who I just don't remember the name of because we've only watched an episode, and the girl, where she's trying to become like an actress, right? She's trying to follow her dream to become an actress, and he's trying to follow, you know, his dream of playing the shamisen like his grandfather. And I like that we get to see them inspire each other to like continue onward, and like, oh, it's so good. It's so good.
It is so good.
From episode 1, it has already started to be very endearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am super excited to watch more of this show.
Me too. Okay. So next we have The World Ends With You, the animation.
Woo! I love The World Ends With You. It was one of my favorite DS games.
It was definitely like one of the most popular DS games. Like it was a
for
hit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like people don't talk about the World Ends With You that often, like in the abstract, right? Like unless there's been like an announcement or something. But I feel like it was very foundational for like a lot of people, especially a lot of people
hugely, yeah.
Who were getting into anime in the early to mid 2000s, right? It hit at exactly that time when people were like, ooh, cool. And I like that The World Ends With You has a very specific style to it that you do not see a lot of, at least anymore. Where, because it's like a very urban, like hip hop kind of feel, and like you get to see Shibuya, and like all of the parts of Shibuya are like recreated and like stylized in a way that is very cool. I like that it is set in what feels like a very real lived-in world, but then you're separated from that world because you're a ghost, right? Because you're not, you know, you're not alive anymore,
right?
I think that's all very cool. I loved The World Ends With You, and I'm glad that it's getting a lot more fanfare recently. Obviously because the sort of ports for like the Switch and stuff have been released. And there's a new game announced in the works, and now there's an anime.
Very exciting.
So I mean, honestly, if it's the decade of The World Ends With You, I would be very happy about that. Like, you know, the world has been without this you know, game for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I will say that the anime it's very mixed bag in my opinion. Because the animation looks like good. It looks really good, actually.
Oh yeah, it looks amazing. Yeah.
They have perfectly recreated the style, and they have this like cool hybridized like 2D 3D like transition stuff. Like, the 3D really works for the monsters, and when you have those like those like panning shots, like those perspective shots where like the perspective can shift around a character, those are all very, very cool, and they flow very seamlessly. Because I feel like more and more it feels like studios are finally kind of understanding how to use like 3D CG animation to like, make things like look cohesive and good.
Yes.
And this is a great example of how to do that. This show looks very cool.
Yes.
I will say that I have a big problem with this show, though, which is that the pacing is so off.
Yeah.
Because like so obviously we just mentioned with those Snow White notes that it's very narratively dense. So it feels like a lot is happening, but you're still able to kind of absorb all that information. The World Ends With You is kind of the opposite, where a lot of stuff is happening, but there's not a lot of time to think about it, and it actually doesn't feel like there's that much substance behind it, writing wise. So even though, like, because here's the thing about The World Ends With You, right? Because it is originally a game, you have to very much consider like how to translate a game story into a non-interactive medium, because you
Right.
can get away with a lot when you're writing narrative for a game, just because the player is going to be playing through things and they're going to have a first-hand like kind of experience with it. So for instance, like, when you are fighting a battle in a video game, you feel invested in that battle because
Right.
your self is at stake, right?
Yeah.
But when you're watching it in an anime, for instance, you have to be invested in the characters succeeding and not just yourself succeeding, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like that has not been as strongly established as it could be in The World Ends With You. I think if they slowed down the pacing a little bit, I think they're trying to cram a lot, like too much into like too little time. And they're cutting a lot of corners to do so. Like they're not doing it in a way that is like they're doing it in a way where it's a lot harder to keep up with the information that you're being given, or they're giving it to you so fast and moving on so fast that it's very hard to form an attachment.
Yes. Yeah. I would say that so far it feels like characters are being thrown at you in a setting
Right.
that's slightly, removed from the actual real world, and you're not really given enough time to create an investment into each of these characters. And so you're just kind
Right.
of left watching the story unfold but not really feeling it.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big problem that's fairly common, I would say, throughout video game adaptations. I've noticed this in the Persona animations. I've noticed this in the
Yeah.
Danganronpa adaptation.
Yeah.
Like a lot of games that get adapted to anime just don't really feel like they've considered that, because I think in a
Right.
lot of ways, because they don't necessarily have to, they assume that you're going to be invested in the characters because they assume you've already played the game, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I think like looking at it from the perspective of somebody who's never played The World Ends With You and does not have an attachment to these characters, it is a lot harder to feel invested, which I think is a real shame, because I think that the game The World Ends With You hits a lot of really awesome emotional beats and has some very interesting philosophical musings about like what it is, to live and to die. And I'm kind of like, I've mixed feelings about it, because like obviously if the anime is bad, that does not ruin the enjoyment of the game. Um, it just means that there was a bad adaptation. Which, but
Right.
on the other
Yeah.
hand, I just wanted the anime to be good, right? Like I wanted to give people the same feeling as when I played the game, which can be very difficult, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so far, I guess based on the first episode, visually it's very impressive, but story pacing wise, it's less so. Hopefully
Yeah.
the rest of the anime will be better. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say. It's probably like I don't know if I'm gonna specifically try to make time to watch it, but I would definitely be
Yeah.
interested in watching more, just to see if they kind of fix those pacing issues. But like
Mhm.
everything else about it is really good. Like the animation is really great, the aesthetics are incredible, and like really a lot of what people remember about The World Ends With You is the music, and the music
The
absolutely slaps.
music, yeah.
Yeah, like when the songs from the like original soundtrack hit, you're like, oh yeah, this is it, this is what I'm here for. So that is a lot of how I feel about The World Ends With You, the animation. I kind of wish the pacing was better because it could really be something special, but I mean, hey, game adaptations are game adaptations, right?
Yeah.
All right, Bakuten.
Bakuten. So there's a big part of me that wants to like weasel this into our anime night.
Okay, what is this show again?
This show is about like group rhythmic gymnastics.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So the gymnastic scenes generally, at least from the first episode, and a little less so in the second and third ones, are in 3D, like CG. But the rest of the show is 2D animated, and the 3D parts aren't like that bad. They definitely stand out because it's like fully 3D. And then later on, they kind of start integrating a little more 2D elements. But it definitely stands out in the first episode because they do an entire routine in 3D. But as you go along, you kind of understand why, because it's a group of dudes all doing like a full routine, and so they're doing a lot of flips and stuff. And yeah, exactly. So they showed like the whole thing essentially. Yeah, the animation itself is actually not that bad because they do try to include like a good amount of like secondary motion to the models and stuff like that. It's not just them going through the motions, which is nice. And the story itself is actually, I think, in my opinion, is well done. Like, you start off with a soft boy who kind of gets interested in the sport, and he ends up getting involved with the club, and then they take him under their wing, and they start forming like a complete team, because the team starts off with only 4 out of 6 members, and so whenever they do any kind of routine, they automatically get docked points because they don't have a full team. But they still manage to score decently high because the existing team is just really, they're very skilled. And so they try to bring in 2 new members, and one of those members is Kageyama, and then the other one is the soft boy protagonist. And they're just like, the way that they kind of deliberately pace the show is so charming and good. Like, the animation, they put a lot of time into showing how this boy is like steadily improving and how he's being helped by his teammates. And so I don't know, like, the animation of him learning how to do a backflip is instilled in my mind because it was so charming. And so I think they strike like a really nice balance between, the sport and the character investment. I think there is obviously like a Haikyuu influence in there. I mean, mainly because of Kageyama, but also the way that they place a lot of emphasis on how the boys interact with each other on the team, and their group dynamic, and how that kind of like steadily evolves as they get better. And then there's also, of course, the fact that other teams get brought in, and then you get to see the interaction between those teams. And so the first team that they bring in, like, it's their rivals. They feel like the interaction between Karasuno and Nekoma, like there's like analogs between each of the team members in each other's teams. And so there's that dynamic. But they do it in like a nice, funny, charming way. So I think overall I highly recommend this anime. It's not necessarily just your typical sports fare. It's a little more than that. So yeah. If you don't like sports anime, this is a little closer to probably your field, because it's not just regular sports anime fare.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe.
Yeah.
If we have time to.
If we have time, we could check out like the first episode or something together.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Pretty Boy Detective Club, which is a Shaft-produced anime about a girl who encounters the Pretty Boy Detective Club, which is a detective club in her school full of pretty boys that solve problems and mysteries and stuff. And her mystery is that she wants to find a star that she saw when she was younger, that has since disappeared. And I'm okay. So this show is like really weirdly engaging to me.
It has a
I'm
very
not
interesting
sure why.
vibe. Yeah, it's.
I think
so,
it's yeah. I think part of it is the Shaft vibes for sure.
yes, yes, yes. It feels like as if Shaft were doing their version of Oron, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So each of the boys in the club have their own like talents and unique personalities and stuff like that, and they I guess come together to solve like a case or whatever. But ultimately, it's about what it means to be a pretty boy detective.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so stylistically and animation wise, it's really pretty. Really, really pretty.
Yeah.
And story wise, it feels like it's fully aware of what it is. And so that's how they tell the story. They know that this is about a pretty boy detective club and not to take that too seriously, but also this does actually mean something to the characters. And so yeah, you build investment that way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested because this show, I feel like has a lot of potential to be really interesting, and I don't know if it's just like just because of the Shaft sort of aesthetics. Like you know what the Shaft aesthetic is, right? It's like this
Yeah.
like near future kind of ambiguous city. Everything feels a little bit like weird and vague and kind of like off kilter. Like everything feels a little bit like adjacent and a little empty. It actually so early when I mentioned that it feels like a stage play, it actually this is what makes it feel like a stage play, I think, in my opinion, where because a lot of it feels like the characters essentially are on stage one at a time. So like whenever characters are not on stage, nothing else actually exists. Is kind of the feeling that you get when you watch this.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I feel like it has very much the potential to have something to say, because the setup is this girl who has essentially this like very um kind of like vague dream. Like she has something that she wants very strongly, which is kind of a great place to start with a story, but at the same time, um it represents something for her, and you get that immediately off the bat, right? It kind of represents like, her childhood, her happy memories, the like willingness to hope and dream, like that you have as like a a young person that will presumably be taken from you as you grow into a cynical adult, right? um and it's interesting because I feel like the fact that they are in middle school feels like a deliberate choice to kind of play on that
Yeah.
idea that it's about people who are growing up and navigating like becoming people who have to take things seriously. And
Yeah.
I actually kind of really like it, weirdly, because I feel like it can be pretty easy to look at it and see it as a little frivolous, but like it's very clear that one, like they do know what the show is. um they understand like it's not to be taken super seriously, but at the same time, like we're getting it from like the perspective of entertainment being shown to us, where we can see that everything is a little silly, it's a little tongue-in-cheek. The producers obviously know that, but at the same time there's an earnestness to the way that the characters will wholeheartedly pursue like what they want.
Yes.
And I think that is like surprisingly engaging and surprisingly endearing. So like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
even though the premise of the show is kind of weird and you're not really sure what kind of show it's gonna be. Like, is it gonna be like a slice of life show, or is it? I mean, probably, right? Or
Right.
is it gonna be like more of an Oran like show where it's kind of like a comedy / like drama / romance sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really want to watch more episodes of this. Like,
Yeah, me too.
it's one of the few anime this season that I can immediately see like something inside of, where I'm like, I feel like there's meat here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which isn't to say that the rest of the shows in this season are have nothing to them. That's definitely not true. Like, there are a lot of really good shows airing this season.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of those, it feels like I will not be able to decipher exactly what meaning I'm going to draw from them until the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm shockingly intrigued by Pretty Boy Detective Club. This is another one of the shows, though, where nobody has ever seen a middle schooler before. Like,
Yes.
one or two of them looks like a middle schooler, and then like two of them look like grown ass men. Like pretty men, but like grown ass men. Like, one of them just looks like Diluc from Genshin Impact.
Yes.
That's interesting. Anyway, what? Middle schools. Come on. I mean, I get, at least it feels like middle school. And I guess you could say that about Tokyo Revengers as well, like middle school being this kind of very carefree time in your life. Actually, I'm having some thoughts about Tokyo Revengers. I'm gonna hold those until the end of the season though, because I definitely want to see what the rest of that show is about.
Yeah, we gotta find out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you enjoy anything that Shaft has ever produced, then Pretty Boy Detective Club is probably going to be up your alley. If you like Oran, honestly, like, you'll probably like this.
Yeah, I think it's a little more approachable than some of their other works too.
So. It doesn't feel quite as like dark, right?
Yeah.
Not even like as darkly comic as like something like Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let's talk about Odd Taxi. Okay, so there are a lot of like weird shows with interesting premises this season, and this one maybe has like the most interesting one, actually. So basically, we're taking a look into an animal world where everybody is animals.
Yes.
Which is already an interesting visual choice. It's, I mean, I feel like it's like a pretty, I wouldn't say popular, but it's a pretty normal thing, I would say, in animated medium.
Yes.
Obviously, you have things like Zootopia, and Beastars, obviously, aired recently, and
BNA.
stuff like BNA. What? There's one more that I'm thinking of, off the top of my head that reminded me of this. But I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's not like that out there. But it is always an interesting visual choice, to make your story look like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the rest of it is like, what?
Yeah, it's one of those shows where, if you go in blind, you're in for an interesting time, a surprisingly interesting time, because the protagonist is just like this walrus cab driver, and the way that he goes about his life is like very like slow and deliberate, right? And so that kind of sets the pace of the show. But then things outside and around him just start to develop, and in a way that is very intriguing, and and there's just like this like slowly growing mystery that is occurring in the city, and he's just you get the feeling that somewhere he's caught in the middle of it, and he's not
Right.
really aware of it because he just wants to do his job, but it's happening.
Oh yeah. Yeah. This show is very sharp. And it takes an eye to society, which is really interesting. Like, I mean, there's some like boomer kind of technology. Everybody's fake on social media, kind of like
Yeah.
oh, look at you, edgelord takes. But across across the board, honestly, it is willing to talk about those things and also like entertain like the rest of what the show is, which is like there are a lot of mysteries around the main character and what's happening. There's like a central mystery of like this girl that went missing, and there's kind of this like creeping sense of dread, right? Of like something bad has happened and might still be happening, and you're not sure, and like everything is like pointing in different directions, and I mean, this show is really well done. It's like there's kind of no other way to put it. It's unique in a way that very few shows are, and I gotta watch more of it. I have
we
to
gotta
know
what
what's happening.
happens. Yeah. I'm invested.
Yeah, totally. So yeah. Next, let's talk about Way of the Househusband, which is about a legendary Yakuza man who retires and becomes a house husband. I feel like everyone and their mom knows about Way of the Househusband, but it has been turned into a anime. Which has led to some it has its fair share of, I guess, controversy surrounding the decisions that have been made during production, because it's not so much a traditional anime as it is like more of an animated like slideshow, like it's more like the manga but with color and more movement, which
and voice acting.
Which I mean, I think is interesting. Like I was very pessimistic about it going in, but honestly,
really?
well, no, just because it's like, I mean, it's a show, or it's a manga that I like really enjoyed. So to see the trailer for it and to see almost no animation whatsoever, and to not know that it was an intentional choice, it makes you assume the worst about the show.
Sure.
But having watched it, it's honestly not as bad as I thought it would be. I think that the animated comic format actually does help the jokes, like the original jokes, land maybe better than if it was a fully animated venture.
Yeah, I think for me, it didn't really bother me that much.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I mean, we've also, if you're expecting your traditionally animated, anime, then I would understand your severe disappointment in this show. I've heard a lot of strong opinions, basically calling it like the ugliest show, like barely animated, it's a slideshow, so on and so forth. But if you have experienced enough anime to know, like, when something is being experimental or when something is trying to do something different, then this is one of those shows where it's very intentionally just trying to strike a balance between the comic and a full animation,
Right.
as per the mangaka's request. So,
well, it's also very funny though, because if you look at the production, the director has come out and said, like, yeah, I mean, there are some parts of this that would have been so much easier if we made like a regular anime. Like,
yeah,
it's
you
not
can tell.
like a right. It's definitely not a cost saving measure.
Yeah.
And a large part of the reason that it happened in the first place is apparently because the original mangaka would not let it become an anime unless they did that. So, you know what? Like, I was not that optimistic about it going in, but actually, this is pretty decent. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here for it, honestly.
I think I mean, as someone who hasn't read the manga, I've basically only experienced the story through this show.
Mm-hmm.
And if it had been to a point where the lack of animation caused the gags to suffer or caused my enjoyment of the content to lessen, then I would understand the outrage, but for me it doesn't. It's still funny. And I still like the show, and so I'm not offended by the lack of animation. I do think there were some sequences where you could kind of tell where it's like, all right, this was probably a challenge for them to keep it restricted.
Right, yeah.
But it didn't deter my enjoyment of the content. So
Yeah. I would agree. I feel like it's one of those things where I don't feel like it is necessarily an objective improvement, but I also don't feel like it is ruining my experience.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, yeah, for sure. Plus, it's really great to hear all of the characters voiced. So.
Oh, the voice actors are like phenomenal.
Yeah. The voice actors are phenomenal. Also, it's very funny because there are a lot of stories shoved into one episode, which is like fine because the original manga kind of follows that same format. The stories are very compact, but it's not like a short form where like you get like 4-minute episodes. It's like the short form where they do like 8 episodes in one episode, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we have Zombieland Saga Revenge.
Oh, I love Zombieland Saga. I love Zombieland Saga so much. Woo boy.
We back.
We back, boys. I don't think there's anything that Zombieland Saga could ever do to just make me dislike it. Because I fucking love Zombieland Saga. I've actually really enjoyed the second season. I like wasn't sure what to expect because I didn't really know what they were gonna do with it, but like I mean we're back. The girls are up to their hijinks, trying to do idol stuff, and kind of every aspect of it has just like gotten a little boost. Like the 3D sections where they do the idol dances is much cleaner. It looks a lot better.
It looks a lot better.
So awkward in the first season, but now it actually looks like it's intentional, which is nice. Aside from that, I kind of like that we're continuing to explore the various characters and their backstories, because we definitely got some of them in the first season, but you know, obviously the first season was about Saki, I think is her name, the gang leader, and about Lily, and then this time we got episodes about Ai and Junko. So I like it. I like it. Zombieland Saga is endlessly entertaining. It's funny. It's surprisingly like there's definitely moments where you're like, oh, huh. Where you like well, yeah, just because you like, you know, you build an attachment to the characters, and when things happen you're like, oh yeah, because even if they're like kind of silly, you're like, yeah, take over the radio station with this guy with his floppy hair.
That's the most legendary pompadour ever.
The most legendary pompadour.
Yeah, you end up getting behind the characters'
right
motivations and investments.
You root for them.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like every episode, I don't really quite know what to expect.
Yeah, every
like
episode's
what kind
a
of
little bit
adventure they're
different,
going to.
which is always it's just super fun. It's like
yeah.
It's like drawing numbers out of a hat. But yeah, like Zombieland Saga, it's more Zombieland Saga. The opening is a banger, and the opening video is amazing.
Yeah.
The songs are really good this season. I really like the music.
Yes.
And the episode where we had Junko singing and she sang in her dulcet tones, I was like, good,
What?
give it to me. Inject it directly into my veins. Yep. I'm just always here for Zombieland Saga. I'll fucking go ham for Zombieland Saga. This is definitely my like comfort watch of the season.
Oh yes,
this show
absolutely.
gives me immense amounts of joy, no matter how I'm feeling. Yep.
Me too.
Okay, let's talk about the big banger, To Your Eternity.
Okay, so before we start, if you don't know anything about To Your Eternity and you're interested in it, I would recommend watching it before you hear anything about it or watch any trailer of it, because I think the blind experience is probably the best one that you could have.
I agree. Yeah. So if you're interested in watching it, absolutely go watch it. We'll give you like 5 or so seconds before we start kind of digging into it.
Yeah. Briefly, the opening, I think both the opening and ending are by Hikaru Utada. And if that sets any kind of expectations in your mind. And yeah, all right, let's get into it.
Okay, so To Your Eternity is about an orb sent down to Earth by God. Maybe not Earth. We don't know where it is, but it is sent down to the world by God to turn into things and experience things. And it turns into a rock, and then it turns into a wolf, and then that wolf was actually friends with the boy, so the wolf orb become friends with the boy, and then the boy is like, I live alone in this remote ice village. I want to go to where there's not the remote ice village, and so they journey northward to the mountains. And they find out that all the people who had left the ice boy all died. They all died. Their caravan got flipped and they just fucking died in the middle of the Iceland. And so he goes back home, but he has sustained an injury that gets infected, and he gets sick and dies. And then the wolf is like, oh, and the orb becomes the boy. So that's what happens in the first episode of To Your Eternity. And I kind of did just distill it into the silliest way I could like explain it.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie. There is something about the way that this is written and depicted where it's so effective at getting you invested that episode 1, at the end of episode 1, I was crying.
I was so upset because I haven't. Everyone likes to talk about how like the first 5 minutes of Up were like they ripped your heart out. I've never been so ambushed since then.
I've never been so thoroughly throttled emotionally by a show.
Yeah.
Like
it was completely insane.
Like, okay, so here's the thing, is that the episode and what happens in the episode are so predictable. You could show, like, the first 5 or so minutes to a 10-year-old, and they would tell you what would happen throughout the entire episode, right?
Right.
It's just like, you know exactly what is going to happen.
You know, yes.
Like, you know that this, like, orb creature as a dog is going to learn about companionship, and then this boy is going to die.
Yes.
Because that, of course.
And then he's going to become the boy. Yeah.
And then he's going to become the boy.
Yeah, you know for sure, but it's all about the execution. And
yeah, totally.
They nailed it.
I've never seen, like, I've never experienced a piece of media that so thoroughly nails how to land, like, emotional impact. Because, like, it's just like the very little thing, and you know what I think it is? I think that this show really understands what makes emotional impact happen, because I feel like a lot of times a show will have a character die, and they'll be like, bam, character death, have emotions, and people are like, oh, boo-hoo, right? But not a lot of care goes into like the moments immediately following a character death that make it set in, because when you watch something, you don't feel sad the instant a character dies. You feel sad in the stuff that happens afterwards, you know,
right, the other characters reacting to it,
in a sense, like the bitter placenta of story. Right?
Alright.
Like,
thanks for that.
when the boy like dies, you're like, oh no, he's dead. But like it's when the orb wolf is like learning about death and like realizing that this boy is not alive anymore. And when you like look at this like wall full of pictures that he's drawn of like the whole village who are no longer alive, and you immediately get hit with this sense of like, oh, like you feel the impact of that because it is depicted in a way where you are allowed to feel it. There is time after to feel the emotions, and not only to feel them, but to amplify them and to drive them home, right? Like,
the fact
that
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the fact that like, you know, we see the boy and we like get to see him like essentially like talking to himself in order to ease his loneliness all this time, and like when you have that final moment where he like is like dying and he like gets like he sits in his chair just in case like somebody comes back, right? Just so that they know that he was alive, right? It really hits because you experience like not only the fact that this character that you've been following for the last like 20 minutes has died, you get not like the reaction of the orb wolf who like doesn't quite understand what death is yet, but you also get to see, you know, like the wall of like paintings, and you get this very profound sense of like this boy died alone, but he still found comfort in like what little companionship he had, even though like it was an alien orb dog.
Yeah, technically his companion had already died. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, it's not like hard to have like a boy and his dog connection, right? That's a trope as old as time, but it really like there's just something about the way that it was executed that really drives it home, and actually makes you feel it, which
I think I really enjoy the decision that they made that we and from the from the first episode on experience the story through this alien orb. Like we the audience are essentially the alien orb dropping down into this world, and we don't have any attachment to these characters yet. And so as the orb is developing an attachment, we are also developing an attachment to the characters until they pass on. And even though we know what's going to happen, it doesn't lessen the emotional impact any. At least not for me and not for you.
I 100% agree. Like I actually really like the because like one thing about it is that essentially the narrator, who is like God, kind of explains at the beginning of every episode what has happened in the last episode, which is like it's whatever, right? I honestly, if you're watching the episodes back to back, I could do without it, but but you know, having that be the perspective, I think, is really valuable. Just because like when, like, obviously, like, you know, like you said, like, you don't have any attachment to a character you've never seen before. Just the same as an orb that does not understand companionship does not have any attachment to, like, you know, human beings or whatever, right? So the fact that you get to grow that very naturally and organically
Yes.
is a lot of what makes it, like, actually land. And, like, I was honestly I was really taken aback at how good the first episode was.
Oh yeah.
And how I actually cried, which, like, I'm like, okay, so I'm one of those people that finds it very hard to cry in general, right? Like, I grew up in an environment where I was taught not to cry, that crying was a sign of weakness.
Right.
So it's very, very difficult for me to induce tears. But the fact that this show did it in one episode was kind of incredible, right? Because, like, I remember when I watched, because here's the thing, when people say, oh, this anime is gonna make you cry, right?
Oh
you
yeah.
always approach it with a little bit of skepticism. Like,
Yes.
I remember the last time somebody said that to me, I watched the entirety of Anohana, and I was like, oh, that was a good story, but I didn't really feel like I was, like, gonna cry over it. I mean, I might feel differently if I went back and watched it nowadays, but, like, when I watched this first episode, I was like, what is happening to my body?
I cry pretty easily with media, and with this episode, I was crying multiple times throughout the episode.
God. Yeah, I mean, it's, I think part of it also is like, they know how to lead up and ramp down from something. So, like, there's a rhythm to it. There's, like, a beat to it.
Definitely.
Like, because when you see the boy sustain, like, his injuries, and you can see that it's bleeding every day, you immediately know, oh, this boy's gonna die. But because they continue forward anyway for, like, 10 minutes, you're left with this sense of dread as it just creeps closer and closer. And then it happens, and like I said, you get all that stuff afterwards, right? That really drives all of those emotions that you've kind of been developing home. And it's catharsis. It acts as a kind of cathartic relief to cry over that, because like, you realize that, you know, this boy was also in the process of realizing that he would, like, die pretty much alone with only his dog with him, and that he would never get to see the people who cared about him, and he would never know if they were still alive, right? Yeah, and there's just something about, like, how well it was executed. Like, I think it was just perfectly executed. I think the pacing of it was impeccable. I think there was literally I, like, watched the first episode, and there was I could not find any personal gripes with anything that happened in that episode.
I think it was brilliantly paced and written and animated. It was just
the animation
really,
looks great,
really
too.
striking. Yeah.
So I watched the first episode, right? And then I was afraid, because
Yeah.
if the first episode is so good,
Yeah.
the rest of the show might not be that good.
Right. It might have peaked already.
It may have peaked. It might try to, like, catch you in the same way and fail because it's already pulled its one trick.
Right.
And then you then you watch 4 more episodes and you're crying again.
And because you already know what's going to happen. And we were talking about this at the end of this next arc, you know, which is a much longer investment, right?
Right.
And we were like, okay, we know what's going to happen. Like, it's so predictable. But then you go through it. And at the end, we were ruined again. All over again.
Yeah, so like, obviously, like, spoilers for the next, like, 4 episodes of the show, but like, it follows essentially, and this is actually very interesting because it's essentially it's a depiction of, like, a human sacrifice ritual but the person who gets chosen is this little girl who the only thing she ever wants in the world is to grow up and be an adult, right? And so you're like, okay, these are the stakes. Cool. How are you gonna fuck me on this one, right?
You already know in the beginning.
Right. You already know. And they go through this whole adventure where all of these things are happening. They get taken to the country like that oversees their country. So for the record, this is 100% like an Ainu like Japanese like allegory situation.
Yes.
There is like I think a lot of it has to do with how, because they pulled that one episode trick, they're like, we can do it in more episodes. And
essentially,
more,
yes.
Right? And it's coming. And like it's so awful because and I say awful in like an I'm impressed way. But like it's so awful because there's like a scene where she the little girl May decides that she's going to sacrifice herself so that her little sister will survive, right? She's like, I will choose to put my life down for the sake of another's, and like goes with the captors, and then all the other stuff happens and she gets rescued, and like it's so evil because that's the moment that they give you hope. They give you the hope that it's not going to end that way, but they've already laid the foreshadowing seed of despair. Because
they do a whole prison break and everything too.
Right, because there's the whole prison break and everything. And then she decides to, again, like going back from the last seed, right, of this moment of like growth as a character, right? This child growing into somebody who like understands like her role in relation to other people, and like she takes an arrow for one of the other characters, and in doing so chooses to sacrifice herself for the sake of another person. The thing is that they pull the same trick, kind of. They follow the same structure of like, you have all this lead up and you can feel the kind of like creeping sense of dread. As until like the thing actually happens, and then you're hit with the shock of the thing happening. And then they wait a couple beats, and then they start really hammering it home. And they don't stop for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. I'll say that they, at the very least, even though we know what will happen and all that, and there might be like a formula, they still are building on the orb story too, and so you get to see more of the orb's abilities expanding, and also like it's learning how to talk, which was crazy thanks to the girl, and so that there's like a lasting impact from her, on top of the fact that the orb can now turn to her too.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, part of it is definitely because we get these like afterlife sequences where like the characters are like entering the afterlife, and like, because in the first episode the boy goes to see his family and you're like, oh fuck. And then in this episode you get to see her like yelling to like the scene that's happening, like, please, to like the girl character, I don't remember any names, where she's like about to like kill herself, and she shouts, and the orb creature stops her, and like all of this it's like so good as individual story arcs, and it's also building on the bigger story of like this orb learning the broadness of like human experience. And I think like it's actually really great. I really like that essentially we're kind of taking this step back and approaching like, what is it that makes us human, right? Obviously, like, this is a topic that I like in my media, but like we get to see what human emotion is like from this outside perspective, and we get endeared to it, like we get endeared to it and inoculated to it firsthand through this viewpoint character, essentially this orb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I think part of the reason it works so well is because they're like making an effort to make an experience where you can understand it, even if like you, for instance, just had never experienced something like that before.
Yeah.
Because essentially they're trying to explain it to an alien.
Mm-hmm.
And like there has never been a piece of media that has made me cry twice in the amount of time that this has. Actually, there's been never a piece of media that has made me cry twice, period, except for this. So I don't like, it's just really good writing.
Yeah. It's really good writing, really well paced, and you feel all of the investment. Even though you know what's gonna happen, you're like, I shouldn't get involved. I shouldn't feel things for this character because it's just gonna hurt me in the end.
It's just gonna
you
hurt,
do it
yeah.
anyway.
What a shame we couldn't listen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm honestly like I'm honestly super impressed. Like this show is definitely looking to be the best show for me for this season so far. But I also said that about One Drake Parody, so I'm gonna hold my tongue maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's wait to see how they go on from here.
I'm really interested to see how they're gonna close the story out. I don't know how many episodes it's going for, but probably I imagine something like 12, 13. But like, it's impressive to do it once. It's impressive to do it twice. It is so hard to do it that third time. And like, I would like, honestly, I would like the show even if they didn't like try to pull our hearts out again. Like if they decided, oh, we're gonna do something a little bit different now, like that would be completely okay to me. That's within the scope of the show, as far as I'm concerned, right? It's about, learning the breadth of human experience, like, all that kind of stuff. But I have a feeling that maybe they're just gonna fucking rip my heart out and trample on it again.
Yeah, they've done it twice, so like, why not go for broke and do it a third time?
To Your Eternity is an absolute like tour de force of emotional investment. Like,
yeah,
like. Look no further if you want to know how to make people cry, because Jesus Christ, there's just something about it where I'm just especially weak to it. I just I don't understand because I don't cry easily, and here I am weeping. I will say it's a very satisfying show to watch as a result of that. Because I feel like a lot of shows have moments where you feel like emotions kind of like surging up, but they don't come all the way out. They don't resolve in a way that's satisfying, which again is like is catharsis, right? What's nice about To Your Eternity is because they're so dedicated to showing you the entire like follow through, like the entire swing through. They really let you feel that sense of catharsis. It's like if you don't sneeze, like you feel like you have to sneeze but you don't sneeze. Like when a show is like, oh, here's some like weak emotions, and I'm like, right.
Yeah, it's if you haven't had a cry in a while.
if you want a good emotion, To Your Eternity, I highly recommend. I mean, obviously your mileage will vary, and I'm not.
Now that we've talked about crying all the time, you probably won't cry.
It's not necessarily going to make you cry.
Yeah. And it's not even necessarily about making you cry either. It's about the fact that it's a really, in our opinion, a well-done story.
It is a very well-done emotional story, regardless of if you actually shed tears or not. Yeah.
Right.
But 100%, like, this show is so good. Like, I'm impressed. Like, there's just nothing else for me to say here. Like, I'm legitimately like here, like clapping my hands. Like, well, you know what? You did it. You did it. You broke through my heart. You did it. You ripped it right out of my chest. You stomped all over it. I hope you're happy with yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would generally recommend this show.
I would highly recommend this show to anybody and everybody. All right.
Yep.
So that was it. No, that's you have one more thing.
I have one more thing just to end off on like a lighter note. I guess. I've been watching Yuukoku no Moriarty's second season.
How has that been? Actually, how was the first season?
The first season was better than I expected. It's still pretty like mediocre, but like
okay.
It was interesting enough. And
sure,
it went for the whole Sherlock approach, but in a way that I wasn't quite expecting. Like the overarching theme of it is about classism, and I was like, I wasn't expecting this in my Sherlock adaptation.
Right. I mean, to be fair, like it isn't the second episode like explicitly about that.
Yeah, but it goes all in for like the rest of the show. It's like the central conflict.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the second season is so much wilder. So they started off with the introduction of Irene Adler, the woman,
of course,
and she gets involved into some kind of political intrigue where she ended up stealing something or coming across something that the government is like, yo, now we gotta hunt you down. And so she needs protection, and so she goes to Sherlock for that protection. And eventually you find out what she holds is the truth behind the French Revolution.
What?
And that the truth about it is in this story that Maximilien Robespierre intentionally orchestrated the events of the French Revolution as a British spy.
What?
And that this was all part of a social experiment by Britain. And he created intentionally the Reign of Terror because the revolution got out of hand. And the reason he created the Reign of Terror is he planned that the end result of it would be his execution, and so he would be a martyr for the cause, and that by him dying, the entire revolution would wrap up in a nice way. So there was that, and then they also revealed that Maximilien Robespierre is one of the Holmes ancestors. So he's the ancestor of Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
And so also the whole like Moriarty plot, right? Because this is about a story in the perspective of James Moriarty. You learn that these three brothers collectively are James Moriarty. They're the Lord of Crime, and they are taking out nobles who are bad, and they only want in order to make like a better society, essentially. So they're eliminating the bad rich people. After the whole Irene Adler situation wraps up, they take her in and basically fake her death so that the British government won't go after her anymore. And they decide that she too is going to be part of their organization, and so they give her their first name, James. Now, if you were to take a step and think, all right, so she gets to choose her last name, what name will she be? What will she choose? And if you were to think of all of the famous Jameses in Britain, what last name would you think that she would choose? And at the end of that episode, she chooses the last name Bond.
Wait a minute. Wait. I have no, never mind. I have no words. Continue.
I guess the word would be what? Right?
That's not where I thought I was going at all.
Okay.
Oh my god.
So the fourth episode, the next episode, they end up fashioning a Jack the Ripper copycat. There's this other force that's trying to start up like this war between the common folk and the police, and are using like a Jack the Ripper copycat to do it. And so then the Moriarty team is just like, yo, we gotta get in that and stop this from happening. So they make a Jack the Ripper copycat. And the police, while the Jack the Ripper copycat is giving them the runaround in the series of alleyways, the police decide that they're going to bust out a Gatling gun to try and stop him. So they mount it in the middle of the street and they start firing it at him, and he's like, hiding from the gunfire. And meanwhile, our newly anointed James Bond is on the roof with a sniper, and they're like, okay, we gotta take this Gatling gun out. So, James Bond, formerly Irene Adler, takes out a coin and kicks it towards the Gatling gun. And then the sniper takes out a pistol, shoots a bullet at the coin. It ricochets off of the spinning coin and into the barrel of the Gatling gun, which causes it to blow up.
Okay.
And I guess they did it because they were looking down at the gun, and so they didn't have a way to shoot directly into the barrel, right? Because it's facing forward and they're looking down at it. And so he used the coin just to bounce the bullet into the barrel of the Gatling gun and explode it. And then they smile at each other and they do like a bro arm bump. And then that's how that episode basically wraps up. And that's all I have to say about Yuukoku no Moriarty in the second season.
Wow.
Huh. So, if our friend Brandon wants to watch it, I highly recommend it.
Well, alright then. Good to know.
Yeah, and I think that's it for the anime this season, right?
God, what an incredible place to end on. Goodness, that's that's quite a lot, isn't it? Well, on that note, let's why don't we wrap?
Yeah, let's wrap.
Oh my god, it's been a little while. What do we do first? Is it where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, sure. I'm Renu, also known as Swan. You can find me on the internet, on Twitter, Tumblr, Twitch at SwanDrawn. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. Sometimes I watch weird anime like Yuukoku no Moriarty and talk about it on my streams. Currently doing art and playing Judgment. And I'm very excited because Judgment is coming out with a sequel.
Yeah,
later on this year.
Well,
yeah,
they announced that they announced that the Yakuza series moving forward is going to be a turn-based RPG.
Right.
So they'll keep the brawling action for Judgment.
I think that's crazy, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah,
I think it's very funny, and I also think that, to be fair, it is very fitting that the first 6 Yakuza games are brawlers because Kiryu does the fighting, and then the 7th one is an RPG because the main character Kasuga just really likes Dragon Quest.
It's perfect.
Yeah. I just wish you streamed at times that I could watch them. Unfortunate.
It's all right. You may play Judgment for yourself, you know?
If it ever comes out on PC, I will, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not impossible, mind you.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm still waiting for a lot of PlayStation games to come onto the PC, so...
Hurry.
Although, speaking of things coming to PC, the Great Ace Attorney games are coming.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
In July.
Yeah.
So we might actually be able to play those.
We might get in there.
Yeah, we might get in there. That's really exciting. I'm actually really looking forward to it because I've never played those games before. So, I know nothing about them other than we have Phoenix Wright's ancestor, a probably real lawyer.
Not Maximilian Robespierre.
Not Maximilian Robespierre. I don't think there's any Gatling guns, probably. But yeah, I would love to be able to play through those games and then talk about them because I, am I'm a veteran of the Ace Attorney series. I have played very many of those games, almost all of them. So, I would really be super interested in checking those out when they launch. Look forward to that.
That's all I've got going on. What about you?
Cool. You can find me all the places at Literal Soup, as always. I am doing my Friend Souls stream where we stream Dark Souls but co-op. We've actually completed most of the game. Technically, we completed the game. But there's DLC that we can run through, so we're gonna do that. But there's not that much left of Dark Souls. We've really blasted through it. It's a lot easier when there's 2 people. That game is trivially easy when you have 2 spellcasters. It's not fair.
Oh man.
But yeah, that's been super fun. I have all the streaming set up and everything, so I have the little icons that react when we talk.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's great.
Yeah. Other than that, obviously every Saturday we do an Ace Attorney stream, which is at 8 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Central for Renu. And we are on the very last bit of the very last case of the second game. Probably by the time this episode comes out, we will have finished the second game. And exciting things are in store for the third Ace Attorney game.
Yeah.
I'm super looking forward to it. Yeah. Other than that, I have I do freelance writing stuff, so my stuff is there and here and there. I was just featured on the Paizo blog for their Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is very cool.
Aw, that's awesome.
So yeah, I guess in that case, let's do the little wrap up then.
Wrap up.
Because that is the end of my plugging. Our opening is by Scott 2 Network, and our ending is by Takamakata. And the patrons we are thanking this week are Evan Williams, Cherubel, Frostfall, Shondao, Magpie Mirites, Claire West, Undead Uncanny, and Dylan Boats. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
You keep the crunchies rolling. Did I say that last time? I feel like I said that sometime recently.
I think you have said that previously, but that's okay.
You keep the funnies mationing.
Oh.
You keep the nets flixing.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. That's the one. All right. Thanks for your support. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to that.
We will see you next time.
See you next time.
また明日ね。